Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about applications and life cycles. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, what does the application development life cycle look like? And I think this is a great question. The short answer is pretty much that it starts out with an idea. It goes on to being a proof of concept, and then it becomes a beta or an alpha or something like that, and then we have a full first release or a first version that you sell to customers or pitch to customers, and then you go through the growth or the scaling pretty much, and then you reach the dip part, or where basically, let's call it the corporate level, and that's pretty much the end state right there. So if we just walk through that again, so the first thing that's going to happen when you develop any application, if we're just assuming here that you're starting from scratch, and the thing is, guys, this doesn't have to be scratch from, hey, you sit there with a few of your friends from high school or from college and you start a company. It can actually be that this is the sort of thing that happens even at the corporate level. It's the same process, it's just that when you're in the idea stage and when you're in the proof of concept stage, there's more people involved in order to develop the project even further. Basically because big companies usually have quite a lot of stakeholder management. They have a lot of overhead in different departments, risk analysis, and like all of this stuff to figure out if this is something that they want to make an investment in. This is one of the reasons why the saying usually is that a company that is really big is very slow in general, while a small company can move much faster. Small and agile teams, that's the whole trend today, right? But firstly, it's the idea stage. So someone has a great idea of some sort, or it doesn't even have to be a great one. It's just that they have some thought on how you could improve people's lives or how you could make some money from something or something like that, right? That's the first stage. And that person, if they need to gather together some developers and some people who can actually produce code and so forth, and ideally a few designers or someone like that, and then salespeople and so forth. Like you need to have a few departments or a few representatives from different departments that have different skills together in order to make this a very sustainable and good product. But that's where it starts. Then you go into the proof of concept. Now the MVP, as we call it, the minimum viable product, is probably one of the best approaches here, where you try to capture the essence of your idea, because every single project, every single IT product out there has what I call a king or a centerpiece, something that is the thing that can sell the idea, the thing that is most of what this thing that you're building is going to produce in terms of value. So what you do is that you build a small version of your project, or your idea, something that just kind of gets people's ideas flowing or things of that nature, so that you can get people to understand your vision. Usually the best way to do this sort of thing is that you create designs or like visual representations or something like that, and you do a bit of user testing before you actually build anything. Now, once that is done, you get to the beta implementation, where like the proof of concept is usually just where people, it's very rare that people, when a project is not mature enough to actually produce real value, that they are going to get excited and give you funding for your startup, or they're going to invest in you, or the company, if you're doing it for a large corporation, that they're going to buy into the idea and really support it. It's usually something just to get people excited and interested, and this is the key thing here. Once you have that, make damn sure that it's not too far for you to go into a full beta. The proof of concept is just to get things started, to like see if you're kind of right about things, and then get in feedback so that you can iterate a few times and improve things. Ideally, you should have a proof of concept that is so well designed up front, because you did a lot of user testing with visual artboards and stuff like that, so that the proof of concept can basically become a beta almost immediately, or with just a few tweaks, right? And then you go into the beta phase or the release. You don't have to have a beta phase, but you have to release a working version of the product. It can be rough, and usually it is. Most projects don't start out being amazing. Facebook was not amazing when it was released. It was a college kids, or a few college kids, depending on who you believe, attempt to create a social media site, and the same thing was for Google search engine, like back before they had complete world dominance, all of this stuff. So even the large corporations start out this way. The product is usually very rough when you start out, and that's fine, because your focus is not to make it mass adopted. That's what's going to come in the later stages, and we were going to get to that. Here it's about getting the early adopters. The early adopters are people who you have designed this project for, or this product is designed for a specific group of people, your market group, the people who have a problem that you are solving with this product, and they're willing to overlook that this is not a perfect or very advanced solution. They just want the value that this thing is bringing. They're willing to try it out, right? This is usually when you get a bit of adoption and a few users, where investors or different people who might give you funding are going to get interested if you're in a startup, or where your stakeholders within your company is going to buy in, and you might actually get capacity and more interest so that you can actually work on this more directly. Depends on your situation, of course, but this is true even if it doesn't matter if you're in a startup or if you're in a big corporation here. Now, after a while of maturing, and this is where like the beta is going on and you have your release and all of this good stuff, you start iterating and you start adding features and things starts to grow. This is what we call the scaling phase. Now the scaling phase is the hardest phase. Usually this is where you start, like you produce a lot of code and you experiment, because basically you can think of your product as like this fat little bird with tiny wings that you're trying to get off the ground. In the beginning it's going to be like up, down, up, down, up, down, until you iterate so many times and you produce enough value and enough features so that it actually can start kind of flying. And then you keep on going with that process until you actually start flying really smoothly. And that process usually involves a lot of adding new people to the project, and adding more people adds more complexity, which means that there are more, because it's more code and more people to synchronize, more ideas and ad hoc decisions that might lead to legacy and so forth. But in this stage, in the early stages, it's very rare that you have the time to focus so much on like real quality and good software development practices and stuff like that, because everything is about getting from, oh yeah, I proved that this thing is kind of valuable, to get to that point where people are actually excited about the project. That's where you want to be. You don't want to get there as quickly as possible, because otherwise people will forget about your idea, or like you might actually stagnate. So here scaling is about trying to get this to go to exponential growth as quickly as possible. And usually this unfortunately produces a lot of legacy and issues. So once you get to a certain level of scaling, like when you get to what I call the corporate level, this is the final stage. The corporate level is when you have a you may not be a profit, but you may not make a profit from your company, but you have an established and safe product, in the sense that you might be sustaining yourself through investors, you might be sustaining yourself from sales, which is probably that's the greatest thing if you can do that. But you have gotten to a point where this is no longer just a proof of concept or a beta or something like that. It might be a rough product, but it is actually sustainable. It is something where you don't have to worry that you don't have enough money by the end of the month. You have some income or something like that. You have investors, or you have something like that. This is where you will start to see basically a pivot from a focus on just exponential growth, trying to get the thing to be as great as possible, as quickly as possible, towards more of a balancing act, if you will, where you spend less and less time developing new things and more time maintaining already existing features, improving code, hiring people, and basically maintaining quality of the product. Like quality and growth becomes almost, I'm not saying equal, but over time that's what's going to happen. This is usually the reason why the big company starts to slow down, because when you have enough features and enough complexity and enough people, things will start going from, oh, you can release almost every single day, or to, oh, you can release once a week, because you have all these people who need to get in their code, and you need to do a bunch of testing and make sure that you inform your customers that, oh, a new version is coming out, and you have all these external stakeholders that need to be scheduled and synchronized and so forth. So now you can release maybe once a week. And then depending on how agile you're going to stay, you might release once a month, once every other month, once every 6 months if you're really like a really big organization with a very old work structure. But this is usually how it goes. So it's almost inevitable that every startup and every company start out as being this fast-moving little organization, or as my boss likes to call it, the fucked up dog, the thing that just is crazy and trying to figure out how to survive amongst all the big lion corporations. And then at some point you will become a lion yourself if you make it all the way up. And so that's pretty much it. So what I want you to take away from this is that the life cycle for every project and every software development company is mostly that you have an idea, you create a proof of concept, you create a beta that people will start to use of some sort. You start scaling your system upwards and you add more and more features to get people to buy into the idea. You get to the corporate level where you actually have a sustainable business around your product, and then over time you will kind of switch the ratio from, oh, we just add more and more features, to we're also a bit about quality and sustainability, and then they will kind of level out and become either equal, or like maintaining will take more time than actually producing new features. So it's inevitable that every company starts slowing down in terms of features or feature development. It will simply take longer, but on the plus side, if you do things well, you may still release fairly often and have a much more higher quality product. And that is the sort of situation that companies such as Google and Facebook are in, where small companies can produce features in a fraction of the time that they can, but the quality of their systems is perceived to be so high that they still stay dominant in the marketplace. Have a great day.